Hi students, welcome to Module 2. In this week, we're going to talk about some important apps and also some collaboration tools that make the job easier for interpreters and translators. These are just some recommendations. I look forward to hearing from you in the discussion, perhaps other tools that you use or the companies that you work for utilize. So please get ready to take some notes. So last week in module one, we talked about remote interpreting and what that entails, the software and the hardware needed. But I just wanted to touch bases on the way that technology changes. And for many, many years, the limited apps and tools and the collaboration were very limited. However, that has been changing in the last decade as technology changes. So do the technology apps and tools for interpreting and translating. So in the past, especially for in-person on-site interpreting, especially for medical or maybe the court interpreting, that was more in a limited environment, in set environments, right? Perhaps the interpreter had to transport he or herself to different departments, be on call, be very limited and had to be taking and rely a lot on their phone, right? Because there were just not very many tools or apps for that matter that they could use to translate. So the phone has been a very a go-to tool for translators and for many many years to store information, to take notes. However, that is changing, especially with remote interpreting and having dual screens, and more than anything, that also that is changing with artificial intelligence. So we're going to look at some apps in this presentation and some collaboration tools. Some of those you might be already using. I look forward to hearing from all of you in the discussion. What are you using? What are you looking forward to using? I wanted to start with something that is very cutting edge, very trendy right now, and that is artificial intelligence. So I linked in the PowerPoint. You can go to Module 2. You can download the PowerPoint. I highly recommend you to have folders, be very well organized for your classes, and have the presentations there. They're there for a reason. We want you to have the resources and the links. Remember, this is a zero text cost class, so we give you the resources. So here in this video, they talked about an international conference for interpreters and the role that artificial intelligence is playing right now with interpreting and translations, right? So I would like for you to take a look on your own time. I put the timestamp there of minute three, around minute 3.6. And this world-renowned translator and interpreter talks about embracing artificial intelligence and why it is not going to displace humans. So I just would like for you to see his perspective. And then I also have a link there to a very LinkedIn article, very recent, also from another interpreter as to how we can embrace and use artificial intelligence to our benefit. So with having said that, I highly encourage you, for those of you that have taken my other courses, you know that I've been encouraging all of you to use artificial intelligence to your benefit for the past year. I received a teaching grant to incorporate more digital tools into my classes, but I highly recommend, if you have not used artificial intelligence at all, to please create an account, a free account in ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, it's spelled chat and then GPT, just like it says here. There are many, many tools right now, but the one that I'm using and that I've found very, very user friendly is ChatGPT. So in ChatGPT, you can talk to it. For those of you that are not very familiar, you do the here and there's a text and you do the prompt and you write to it as if you were talking to a person with lots of details. The more detail you can give the artificial intelligence machine, the better. So in this case, for my other class right now, I have an assignment by BA 131. Some of you are in BA 131 business interpreting. So the assignment is to translate a census in-home visitor script. And I put the prompt here, translate a visitor script from English to Spanish. Informal you, usted, format with the appropriate subject verb agreement, use it instead in Spanish. Then I went ahead and copy pasted all the English text that I wanted translated into Spanish, and it rendered a very, very professional translation. Now, for that assignment, I provided the correction key to my students so they could cross-reference and they could see what my client ended up accepting and adopting for the translation because this was a group project. But this is just to give you an idea for you to please take a look into this and incorporate your ChatGPT account or create a ChatGPT account free of charge. Do not do any paid subscriptions, just so if you have not done it in the past, you could practice with a written translation. But however, I always like to emphasize that please remember to prove because again, they're machine translations. You have to make sure the colloquial language is there. If you speak another language, I highly recommend you to say render a translation and put some text there and say translate this from perhaps English to Vietnamese so that you can also cross-reference. So let's start with the very basic, the study apps. Most of you are familiar with the following apps that are noted here in this slide. Again, is just to we're going to cover everything from study apps, time management, how, in terms of working in project management, which is your next assignment for module 3. But these are just something very simple. The majority of you have probably already used them. If not, I encourage you to take a look at them. Evernote, you can, it's also a repository. You could include in-house different information there, and of course your Quizlet. You could do flashcards when you're studying terminology, and then flip it, and then no, and then put your source and the target language there. Also, the listen and drill. It's a very, very popular app for people to learn a foreign language and to practice their listening skills, right? So I would highly recommend this is extra support for your listening skills. You can adjust the play speak to practice shadowing technique. So this is excellent. You could do that with audiobooks, your TED Talks, or you can even do it in movies. You could do subtitles for rendition. Also, some other apps that are available are the Audible app, where you can listen to audiobooks and you can download them via Hoopla or the Libby app with your local library card. Also for voice coaching, if you have not used any of this, I highly recommend that you at least try one. They practice your interpreting and oratory skills. Now, for my other classes, I do ask you in BA 130 to render your audio of a Spanish translation. So this would be an example of where you might be able to use this, and it provides coaching and feedback in various languages. So it will pick up on filler words such as and others. So I highly recommend Orai or Spico. And again, just for you to be, as you're speaking and recording audio, for you to get feedback like, hey, maybe you need to enunciate this, you missed this. So those are great apps for those of you that are still feel a little shy and want to improve your voice when you render an interpretation. Now, about machine translations, I always tell my students do not just insert the translation and give me a Google translation because that is very unethical without you even doing the proofing. And let me give you an example. I in one of my classes I give an assignment and I know exactly who put it in through Google Translate because the Google Translate has 10 mistakes. So a lot of students do get a D, a C, a D, and even an F because they just completely copy pasted the translation. So Google Translate, I have my reservations because there are major translations that have really cost a lot of that went viral. Let's say that because folks and companies have used Google Translate and without having someone to really be able to make the corrections and distinguish if it's a literal translation or a colloquial, then that is very, very serious. So we'll use this. My apologies for, I'm going to use this Spanish to English translation. My apologies for those that are not Spanish speaking, but I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can. So there's the saying, a very colloquial, that we you heard the word "don't spill the beans," right? In English, idiomatic expression, "don't spill the beans." So someone puts it there in Google Translate in English and then says in Espanol, in Spanish, what would this be? And this is a literal translation of spilling the beans. Like, do not let the beans out, right? Like, spill the beans does not mean do not talk, do not say the word, do not let out a secret, right? So obviously we get the wrong translation, and then for someone not knowing the colloquial or idiomatic expressions, even in Spanish, they would just put as is, and this would be incredibly wrong. Now, I just a classmate, a colleague of yours, just called my attention to DeepL and another app, and I just started using it very, very recently. And this is a huge difference. This we put the same words, also machine translator, and I really encourage you to use it. This is a big difference because when you put the same idiomatic expression in English, don't spill the beans, and then you ask it to translate it to you in Spanish, it gives you a better interpretation or translation. Okay, it really is telling you don't spill the beans, do not say it, do not say this secret, do not tell people, so do not spill the beans. So just giving you an example of something that is worldwide utilized does not necessarily mean that is the best out there. So please be very careful with Google Translate because and it's at least in Spanish the mistakes are horrendous. Okay, so I want you not to rely on that. Also, challenges and possibilities. So, for example, the iTranslate can translate text, websites, or start a voice-to-voice conversations in over 100 languages, including English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Now, the canopy speak, that's something that is used by some medical or maybe hospitals, some medical clinics, or medical providers for machine interpretation versus the live interpretation. So please, I'm not going to go a lot into detail, but I do want you to at least go and try some of this so that you know what's out there. Now, in terms of a collaboration, it is very, very important for you to I've collaborated. I mean, I've been translating for over 25 years now. My experience is based mostly in written translations, but I collaborated in many projects in the cloud. And I remember back in the day when I was starting, a client would send me a very heavy file in Dropbox. Otherwise, it was a nightmare sending something or being able to work on it. So a client would send me something in Dropbox and I would download it. I mean, it came to a point where even one had to send me a USB because she was having so many problems uploading to Dropbox. But then it became the cloud, right? So now we use iCloud or we use the iDrive. I work very, very well with the iDrive in Google. I highly recommend that if you're not familiar with Google, you do become familiar with Google, all the Google apps. Please explore them. If you do not have a Gmail, create an account. There's 9 dots right here. This is what's called the app, the grid or a waffle. Waffle is a very more popular name. Where you open it, it gives you all the apps that are available in Google. So here you would go to your Gmail, to the dogs, the slides, to your calendar, your YouTube, the translate, but there's also a feature that in Google Docs that I'm going to talk to you about shortly, but it is very, very recommended that interpreters and translators are familiar with Google Drive because this is a great collaboration tool. Now, the interpreters help you have an assignment. Please watch the video tutorial in a very short video tutorial on how to create an account. Now, it was purchased by Boothmade, so it's going to ask you to create an account. They're still in the process of transitioning and syncing both apps. You could create your own glossary, which is something that you're going to do as part of one of your assignments in Module 2. And then you share the glossaries with others. In this case, you're going to send me a link so I can give you your grade. And then you could also search for glossaries. You can, in the video tutorial, I share with you the IEP terms and the special education glossaries, but there's also many, many more because this is a tool that for a long, long time has been used by interpreters worldwide. So there's some very, very useful information in that app. Now, it's also very important to be able to communicate with your colleagues when you're doing a translation. Maybe you're going to be using FaceTime, as Skype is not as popular anymore, but you can chat, you can communicate with your colleagues while you're rendering a translation. Maybe you need to do a handover of your interpreting. If it's a very long interpreting session, then maybe you break it into two collaborators, and then maybe the first person does one part and then the second person does the other part, which is what happened in one of the many years ago. A client hired my services to be doing the written translations for the city of Santa Ana for a measurement that they were passing, but they also hire a company that would come with their audio sets and interpret for non-English speakings, and they would take turns because the meetings were long, the town hall meetings. So there's all many ways to collaborate with your colleagues. Another great tool for collaboration is Slack. Is a collaborating tool. More and more companies are using different types of apps. Some use WhatsApp. I personally have used Slack and I really, really like it. I during COVID I worked as the text analytics for Medallia, the number one company that creates surveys for major corporations, Target, CVS, hospitals, you name it. Medallia is the number one text analytics for surveys, and I had a job doing some interpreting of their text for surveys for other countries. So we would all communicate in Slack, and it was a great collaboration because I could just easily just in Slack just text someone. Maybe they were in Mexico, they were in Spain, or they were in another country, and they say, hey, what do you think about this using this language? What do you think about this translation for this? So Slack is also a great collaboration tool. Now, speech recognition and note-taking apps. There's the Otter app. That one I would highly encourage you to try it. Maybe when you're doing one of your interpreting exercises for another class, you turn it on, and then you do the speech recognition and note-taking to help you as you're interpreting. So I play with these apps and then see how do you feel, what's your comfort level. But very important, the voice memo in your phone. Sometimes students tell me, well, how can I record this? What app do I download them? And I let them know, hey, your phone has, this is the Android or the Apple, the iPhones, they have a voice recorder. So please make sure you also utilize those. Now, improving simultaneous and consecutive interpreting, this is something that we really have at our fingertips, and sometimes we do not use. And it's right there in front of us because you could do this in your Word document or Google Docs. Now, I'm going to encourage you to use one app or one collaboration tool that I'm mentioning in this presentation for your discussion. But I highly, if you do not have any experience doing this, I would highly encourage you to go to Google Docs and do the voice typing, and then either say something in Spanish, read a text, or in Vietnamese, and then see how it will render it to English, and see and then no, I'm sorry, not render, how it will type it and what how correct it is. So please make sure that you do that and that you practice with one of those typing collaboration tools. For note taking, for those of you that have Microsoft, for example, has Notes, the Google, also Google Docs. I mentioned the voice typing right here, and here you can also record your voice or record someone else's voice if you need to do practice interpreting, you could do that. You could play an audio, like for example, my classes, I tell students, my other classes, hey, play this audio and then do the translation, the interpreting. So in this case, you would play the audio, you would have it transcribed here in Google Docs, and then I would put it in an, maybe artificial intelligence to give me a Spanish translation, and I would work with it then. That's just if you're a beginner. If you're more advanced, you could still do the voice typing, but then you would do the translation yourself. PDF, very, very important because a lot of clients, especially if you're going to be freelancing and even in the interpreting translation world, we deal a lot with PDFs. So PDFs are great for annotating. If we're going to do a site translation, you can edit on it, you can write, you can put notes, you can annotate just like you would annotate with any other document. But you need to be able to open your PDF document because it's very frustrating when you have older versions that do not have a PDF reader. So the beauty of the PDF is that you can convert it to a Word document, and that way you can extract the text. But you do need to have Acrobat Pro DC because you need to be able to read it, and remember that as a SAC student, you get the Adobe programs for free. So make sure you also are aware that how to work that because most of the translation projects or documents are in PDF. A lot of the resources that I put in the class are PDF. Now, Google Chrome includes a free PDF viewer. That's why when you're in Google and you open a PDF document, it opens it up on your screen. Now to just end this presentation, a couple of things. For example, we talked about in module one about the software and hardware needed for voice remote interpreting. The most important thing also remember whether it's your laptop or desktop, you needed to connect to that platform, right? Either Google Meets or Zoom or whatever platform you're going to use to do a video remote interpreting. But you also need your screen, right? And a lot of interpreters or translators, they use dual monitors because they want to be looking in their screen at the person and the or the people, the group of people that they're going to be servicing. But they also want to look at the documents. So a lot of people use dual monitors or screens that can be attached, a monitor screen. Also to capture the sound, it's very important that you keep this in mind. If you're going to use a headset when you do interpreting, the drawback is if you use it, if you connect it to your computer, you will not be able to capture the sound, will not be able to use the dictate feature of your computer for transcribing later. So how do you solve that? You can sign on with two different accounts, one to capture the sound, the other for you to provide the rendition with your headset. So you just need to learn all these tricks to get around and to make the most of your interpreting experience. Now, what are the protocols? When you're working with a company, you need to know what the protocols, what are their guidelines? So you need to make sure, first of all, what industry are you going to be doing the interpreting for? Right? I mentioned in the past that if you've been in one of my classes, that when I interpreted in the past for board meetings for school districts, I did 2 or 3 days ahead, they post the agenda and I make sure that I know what the agenda is. If the presentations are already there, I review the presentations to make sure I know the language because in board meetings for schools, do not be misled and think that it's all about education. They could talk about any topics from A to Z, financial matters, construction projects. So you need to be very well rounded. What are the expectations and the participants? You need to know, hey, how many people are going to be here? Is this an IEP, an individualized educational plan for the special ed education students, or what type of interpreting are you doing remotely? Who's going to be there? The principal, the teacher, the parent, the student. You're aware of the technology being used. And this week you have an exercise in which you're going to just copy paste or create a glossary. So I would like for you to do it in the industry that you would like to work in. And then what limitations do you foresee? In my case, my limitations are that because I live in a rural area, I have low internet connectivity all the time. And I upgraded it recently, but I'm always with this fear that what's going to happen, I need to have a plan B. So I always have my phone next to me in case I need to connect or reconnect. Do you have a colleague to work with? Is this something that you're going to hand over to someone to do the second part? And then the common troubleshooting. Does your limited English proficient person, do they hear you? Did you do a microphone check? Because remember, you need to check sound, make sure that can you hear me well? I know I can hear you. You need to troubleshoot this, right? Cannot see you. You need to check your webcam way before you go live so that you make sure that you're on camera. Again, I mentioned the challenges when it comes to internet speed. And then what happens if there's a blackout? And then all of a sudden, on your end, your connection is lost. And then what if something's just stop transcribing on Word and you need to deal with, your other screen that you have here that is transcribing everything that is being said. So always you need to be prepared for different things because they will come up. Things happen, it's life happens. So the same with a remote live translation or interpreting, or interpreting, it can happen. So maybe, for example, some of the troubleshooting that I had in the past, we kept calling a parent on Google Meets and she would not pick up. Then we call on the phone and the call kept disconnecting. Another troubleshooting was that besides the low internet connectivity, I wanted to share a screen so that they could see the IEP. And at that particular one, I was the teacher, I was not the interpreter, but I needed to also share it on the screen and it would not share my tab. So anyways, a million things can happen. Murphy's Law, you think you're prepared, and then you do your translation, and then you start having, you need to start troubleshooting. So I know it's a lot to take in. This is a longer presentation. There's a lot to cover this week. Just make sure that remember don't overwhelm yourself. You don't need to become an expert in all this apps. This is just to give you an idea what's out there to help you, to assist you, to improve your listening, to improve your oratory skills. So just make the most of it. You do have to try at least one for the discussion for this week. And then you also have another assignment in which you're going to create a glossary. So more on that in the tutorial video. Thank you.